Welcome back to CKLA Chats. I am DLC Foster-Yankey, and in this video, we're going to be chatting about Lesson 6 in the Midsummer Night's Dream unit, and it is all about upper class workmen and fairies. Hey, so this lesson is divided into 6 subcomponents that make up the 90-minute ELA block, and we'll talk more about those in depth throughout the video. The first subcomponent is a character warm-up power for 15 minutes. So for this warm-up activity, students are told that something actors often ask themselves is how much power his or her character has compared to others in a scene, because thinking about power helps actors and readers understand how characters can get what they want. They go on to explain that it's a question that often has multiple right answers, and actors sharing scenes don't have to agree, but they do have to be able to support their argument with text evidence. The teacher goes on to explain that students will warm up by comparing the power of some of the characters in the play. The teacher poses discussion questions and writes the answers on the board, beginning with the first question: what makes a character powerful? Students list the characters in the play so far. As characters are named, students are invited to hold the respective character cards. Then students turn and talk to a neighbor about the most powerful character they have met so far, providing a reason for their choice. The teacher reminds them that there are multiple possible correct answers, but they must be able to support their answer with text evidence. As a check for understanding, the teacher circulates as students discuss to ensure that students understand how to determine a character's amount of power. The next part of the activity, the teacher presents 2 characters and asks the class which one is more powerful, also asking that students support their response with evidence from the text. So they start by comparing Theseus and Aegeus, then Lysander and Aegeus, then Lysander and Demetrius, Hermia and Helena, Quince and Bottom. Okay. Once they are done with that activity, they move on to the next subcomponent, which is summary, Act 1, Scene 1A for 15 minutes. The teacher reads the first section of the summary aloud and has students circle the names of the characters as they follow along. Then the teacher poses a discussion question, which is listed on the screen here, just making sure that they know who the characters in this scene are. Next, the teacher displays the character cards for Oberon, Titania, and Puck, and then poses another discussion question, which is why are they fighting and where are we now? So what is the setting of this scene? Students finished reading the excerpt in pairs, with one partner reading Oberon's lines and the other reading Titania's. The teacher tells them this part of the summary comes from Shakespeare's lines. Next, students turn to activity page 6.1 and complete the character organizer for Oberon and Titania, only because they will learn more about Puck later. Students are reminded that the text may not provide detailed answers to all the questions, but they can make an educated guess based on what they do know. Okay, for the next component, divide the chapters for 10 minutes. The teacher makes 3 columns on the board and poses a discussion question, or they shuffle the character cards and have students draw one and place it in a column. After the second question, students come up with a name for each group and label the columns. So the point is to get them to see the differences between the 3 different groups of characters. And the idea is for each type of character to end up in one of the 3 different columns. And these are the discussion questions to guide them towards that. Okay, then they move on to move like a character for 20 minutes. For this section, the teacher reminds students about how they have seen how character traits in action and plays are shown through both a character's words and movements. 3 to 5 volunteers are selected, or more if space allows, and the teacher tells students that they will direct the volunteer actors in a simple representation of the scene they read earlier. The teacher calls out the actions of the scene, and the actors stage the scene without words. Students in the audience offer opinions about how the actors should move, speak, and or pose. Students are reminded to make choices based on the text, beginning with the adjectives they inferred from the text and recorded in the character organizers. Alternately, 2 students could make the directing suggestions and the class could vote on which one should be used. Students are reminded to provide direction for all the characters in the scene, even if only one character speaks or moves. So to continue, the teacher calls out actions and the directors guide the actors. Then the class repeats the exercise with new students playing the part of the workmen. If time allows, they repeat with the upper class Athenians. As a check for understanding, the teacher circulates around the room and asks students what was different about how the characters in each group moved, how they spoke to one another, and how they left. They ask questions to prompt thinking as needed. For example, did they stand close or far apart? Were they friendly or angry, formal or informal, strange or typical? Then the class moves on to writing for 20 minutes. The teacher reminds students that productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream can be very different visually and points out how different the character cards and video clips are. Students are told that they will describe their version of the fairies in A Midsummer Night's Dream. They are asked how they would dress the fairies if they were directing this scene, and told to imagine an average fairy subject, then to imagine what an actor playing this role should look like. Students turn to activity page 6.2, and the class reads the prompt together, and that is, you can't always judge a book by its cover, but theatrical directors and designers do rely on what people see, clothes, makeup, and hair, to help the audience understand the characters on stage quickly. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare's text doesn't include much information about what the characters look like, so there are many ways to interpret the characters visually. Today, ask yourself, what does a fairy look like? Write a paragraph describing the physical appearance of Oberon, Titania, or one of their fairy followers. Think about the adjectives you have used to describe them and what you know about them from the summary. With that character knowledge as your inspiration, think about how you would represent those traits physically. Things to think about. What is your character wearing? What color are the clothes? What about hair, makeup? Do your fairies have wings, fur, or pointy ears? Is your character carrying anything? Use details from the play to help think about how these magical creatures might look. Okay, so once the prompt has been shared and explained, students will write individually. If time allows, the teacher alternates between having students share their pictures and paragraphs and showing photos of Oberon, Titania, and fairies in productions. And these are from the digital components in the curriculum. They will wrap up with a discussion question, which is here in the center of the screen. Finally, students will turn to activity page 6.3. The teacher will tell them that for homework, they will imagine the look of upper class Athenians and workmen, just as they imagine their fairies. As part of the assignment, they should draw or collage from magazines, pictures printed from the internet, a possible costume for one character from each group. They should attach the pictures to activity page 6.3 and provide 2 reasons for their choice. Students are reminded to look at their character organizers to see some adjectives they have already assigned to characters. The teacher models providing a reason for a visual choice and reminds students that Athenian does not mean it has to look like ancient Greece. and that productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream are set in all sorts of places. Students should be discouraged from replicating the character cards. So be creative. Right. And that concludes the video for lesson 6. And I'll see you in the next video.